Quinn, right? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. It's nothing new. I'm Quinn.
Kenzie.
Is my life finally changing? Did I finally meet someone at this school who saw me as human? Ow!
I'll handle this.
It's okay. It's just best to ignore it.
You sure?
I mean, I'd rather spend time with you anyway. But I do have to go. See you later?
Quinn? So, the prom is coming up and...
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I'd love to go to the prom with you.
Great. Pick me up at 8?
This is the happiest day of my life.
So is it done?
Yeah. He doesn't suspect it.
It was getting late, and it was almost time for their curfew, so Quinn and Varden decided it would be best to head back to the dorm rooms. When they arrived, they noticed that the lights were out, and Peter was already in the room fast asleep. "Does he look okay?" Quinn asked, as he noticed Varden was looking around to see if he could see any markings on his face or body. "Yeah, he seems fine, but even if he was getting bullied, he could have gone to the doctor's office before coming here," Varden replied. "Well, I still think we should keep an eye on him. There's no way higher levels would just become friends with a lower level for no reason," Quinn said. Varden cleared his throat loudly and started to look at himself. "Of course, there are some exceptions," Quinn said, smiling. With the other two now fast asleep, Quinn was still awake messing around with his system. He was busy watching the tutorial videos of the hammer strike. He didn't have enough points in agility to earn the flash step, but with the gauntlets, he did have enough for the hammer strike. The video contained the blonde man demonstrating what to do step by step. It was incredibly detailed, showing everything in slow motion to the point where it also described the feeling the user should have every step of the way. Quinn repeatedly watched the video as he wanted to learn and test it out in the game tomorrow. After finally remembering all the steps and believing he had a confident grasp on the skill, he shut his eyes and went to sleep. The next day, Quinn had woken up earlier than the other two. He immediately wanted to go to the game to create his character and test out the skill he had been learning all night. Just in case the others wondered where Quinn was, he left a note before leaving. When he finally arrived, the VR room was emptier than it was yesterday, most likely because it was early in the morning and not a lot of students had woken up yet. Quinn then went on to do the same as Varden had done yesterday. He went up to the pretty lady who stood behind the counter and asked to rent a capsule, only this time for 2 hours. There wasn't much use for his credits other than buying late-night snacks, and at the moment not even that satisfied him. Ever since he had his first taste of blood, food was starting to taste bland. He still got hungry like everyone else, but the taste of ice cream and sweets just didn't have the same rush effect it once had. To get that feeling again, he could only get it from blood. But Quinn made sure to only consume blood when he needed to or to get himself stronger. He was afraid that he might become addicted to the feeling, and if he did, it would only cause more problems for him. Before entering his capsule, Quinn looked around the room and noticed some students carrying their beast weapons with them. Not all students used one like Varden, but after watching the games Varden had played yesterday, he did see a few of his opponents have one, which meant most likely that the students bringing their weapons with them meant that the game was also able to recognize the power of beast weapons. Just on the side of the capsule, there was a large rectangular box, and underneath were the words written, "Beast's Weapons." So it looked like Quinn was right after all. After taking off his gauntlets and placing it into the box, the capsule started to scan the weapons. "Scan complete. The beast weapon may now be used with the capsule." He then hopped in and logged into the game. Only this time, instead of logging in as a guest, he decided to register an account. "Please create a user ID." Quinn thought long and hard. He didn't want anything that could give his real identity away, but at the same time he wanted a name that would express his newfound self. Something like Vampire God just wouldn't work and gave too much information. Plus the idea of putting vampire in his name just sent cringe tinkles running down his spine. Finally, he had settled on a name. User ID created, Blood Evolver. The name was chosen for a few reasons. Quinn could feel his body getting stronger with each person's blood he drank. It was as if his body was evolving into something else, and in the future, he knew he would be stronger than he was now. He thought the name was very fitting for himself. The next step was to design his character. The body proportions of his character were the same as him, but he was able to choose what hairstyle and simple clothing he wanted on it. Quinn had always been born with black curly hair and wanted to change it but never got the chance to. Now it felt like he could be someone else. After going through all the options, he finally decided on a red, spiky-haired character who wore simpler villager clothing. It looked like a farmer from an old fantasy world. Once the character had been completed, Quinn was once again teleported to the large, white, empty room. That's when Quinn noticed something. While in the room, Quinn was able to walk around freely and move his body just like he could outside. He was currently dressed as the character and even had his gauntlets on. Then, when Quinn tried to open up his system, to his surprise, it appeared like usual, showing all of his current stats. Quinn looked down at his gauntlets and immediately wanted to test something out. Blood swipe! And in that instant, a red claw-like line left Quinn's hands and scratched the ground. For whatever reason, it seemed like Quinn's system and abilities still worked inside the game. After finding out that his blood swipe worked in the game, Quinn immediately opened up his system to check his stats again. Only unlike the outside world, where his HP would have gone down by 1 HP, everything had still remained the same. Was it because using it didn't actually use any blood? When Quinn would use blood swipe outside, the red claw-like shape would leave his hand, and at the same time, he felt like a piece of energy inside him had left with it. The minus in his HP would indicate that it took part of his life force or his blood. But inside the game world, the attack did no such thing. It was just replicating what his mind told it to do, while scanning the body inside the capsule to see if it was possible. To test this, Quinn swiped his hands non-stop, swipe after swipe. Red lines left his fingertips in a flurry, but at the same time no HP was lost. Just in case, Quinn opened up the game system and checked, and right next to his name, where there was a section to fill in your ability, there were the words written none in the box. However, another thought came to Quinn's mind. If he didn't lose any HP when using the skill, this also meant that his blood bank would have no effect in the game. When he would get attacked, it would do no physical harm to his real body on the outside. He wasn't actually losing health, so inside the game, he wouldn't be able to rely on his blood bank to save him out of tough situations. But the fact that Quinn was able to use these abilities in the game made him think, was his system really an ability? At first he assumed so. After all, he had received the power from what had looked like an ability book. Of course, he had never heard of an ability like this before, but there were many abilities in the world that originals had hidden and kept for themselves. Then he thought back to his status change. Next to race, it stated he was no longer human. Perhaps his abilities were more a side effect of changing race, rather than an ability itself. That's why the skills that he unlocked through the system didn't really follow a pattern. What the blood bank could do differed greatly from what his blood swipe did. If Quinn's theory was right, did this mean he could also learn an ability? He hadn't tried so far because he thought it simply wouldn't have worked, but now if he was to test this, he needed to think long and hard about what ability to learn. Before going into his first game, Quinn wanted to test out the hammer strike. He had been watching the video all last night and felt like he was ready. Place your foot forward like this and at the same time rotate your body. The energy should flow through your toes upwards. Then, as you pull back your hand, stomp on the ground and at the same time release the energy through your fist, Quinn mumbled as he went through the steps. At first, Quinn did all of the required steps slowly, making sure he did all of the steps perfectly, not using any of his energy or strength. He did everything step by step as the video had explained. After going through it a few times, he was ready. In one motion, he did all the steps as fast as he could, and just like the video had stated, he could feel the energy rising from the bottom of his feet into his fist. The powerful strike left his hand, and a loud bang was heard. A small shockwave in the air was created. "I did it," Quinn said. Although the shockwave was nowhere near the size of the man in the video, Quinn was still happy with the result. There was no longer any need for him to delay anymore, and he went and clicked on the search function. For his first match, Quinn wanted to go against the same power level user as him, a level 1. Technically, Quinn himself knew he was beyond level 1. If he was to take a guess, he would say he was around the same power level as a 2.5, but for his first match he just wanted to make sure of a few things. The game had found him an opponent and he was immediately teleported to an arena. When the countdown had finished, it was time for the match to start. The student in front of him had no beast weapon, so Quinn was cautious at first, and at the same time he wanted to test something out. Quinn got in close to the student and was ready for whatever was to come. That's when the student had shape-shifted his hands into a claw-like shape and scratched at Quinn's body. The attack was slow, and Quinn was able to block but chose not to, and allowed the attack to scratch against his chest. While playing the game, inside the user's view was his and his opponent's HP bar, placed in the bottom right-hand corner. When the attack went through, a small amount of HP had been taken. Quinn then quickly stepped back a few steps and proceeded to use his blood bank skill. HP is currently full, unable to use blood bank. It was as he had suspected. Although he took damage in the game, nothing had happened to his real body outside. With his thought confirmed, Quinn was now ready to end the match. He dashed forward, and when he was close enough, he threw out a blood swipe. The student lifted his claws to block, but the second the blood swipe made impact, his claws had shattered, and followed up behind the first blood swipe was a second one. The student's HP was lowered now by around 25%. Although Quinn could have easily finished the match with a barrage of blood swipes now, he chose not to. He had wanted to originally play the game to help train his fighting skills, and in the outside world, Quinn wasn't able to use the blood swipes as he liked. Quinn got in closer to the student. By now, the student's claws had already regenerated. The student swung again, but this time, Quinn ducked underneath the attack and threw out a punch to the student's stomach, followed by another punch to the student's face, and finished him off with a cross-shaped dual blood swipe with both hands. Winner, Blood Evolver. Just then, though, Quinn had received another message from his own system. Opponent has been defeated, 25 EXP has been earned, 305 of 400 XP. It was unexpected, but Quinn had received EXP for defeating an opponent in the game. Suddenly, a large grin appeared on his face. After defeating the student inside the game, Quinn received 25 EXP points compared to his regular 50. This was a large surprise to him, as Quinn didn't expect a fight in the game to contribute to points in his system, but at the same time, this was great news. Due to the heightened security around the school, it would be harder for him to find opponents and draw out their blood. That and the gauntlets he was using a dead giveaway. Although gauntlets were a rare weapon, there were millions of military personnel playing the game. Even if he was to use them, they wouldn't be able to pinpoint it to him. But now that Quinn was able to level up, it solved his current problem of getting stronger without the need of consuming blood. Although he didn't know why he had only received 25 EXP. If he had to take a guess, it could have been because he wasn't fighting these people in real life, or the fact that the opponent he went up against was too weak. Without wasting any more time, Quinn immediately went to search for another game. He set the power level to level 1, that way he would be matched up against easy opponents. An opponent was almost found instantly, and Quinn got straight to work. Rather than reserving his power like in the last game, Quinn decided this time he would just send out a barrage of blood swipes at his opponent. And his plan worked. His first opponent was dealt with so quickly that Quinn didn't even have time to find out what ability he had. 25 EXP gained, 330 of 400. Quinn's next 3 opponents were dealt with just as easy as the other 2. There was an Earth Elemental user who was too slow to cast his spells. He simply avoided the attacks, and then, when he was in range, would unleash the blood swipes. The 2 after that were just as easy as Quinn's previous fights. He would quickly dodge their attacks, and when he was close enough to them, he would spam his skill. Of course, Quinn knew he wouldn't be able to do this type of thing outside the game. After all, this skill had a major setback of reducing his health. If Quinn was ever in the danger zone and then got attacked, he would be dead in an instant. But he just wanted to level up as soon as possible, and after defeating the next 3, he did. 405 of 400 EXP. Congratulations, you are now level 4. Race, Halfling. HP, 25 of 25. 5 of 800 EXP. Strength, 13. Stamina, 12. Agility, 14. For the first time since Quinn had leveled up, he hadn't received a new ability. He somehow had expected this, but at the same time was hoping for something useful. He would just have to keep leveling up and waiting for more skills in the future. Finally, though, what Quinn had wanted had arrived. The reason why he wanted to level up so fast was because of the free stat point received after every level up. Agility 15. He immediately put the point into his agility stat, and now he could finally learn the flash step from the tutorial. This time, while following the tutorial from the blonde man, Quinn was able to follow him step by step along with the video. Unlike when learning the hammer strike, where he had to watch it repeatedly and was unable to do everything. After several minutes of Quinn practicing the flash step, he finally had a stroke of success. "Yes!" Quinn shouted. However, what Quinn did notice was while he was in the white room on his own, his body would never feel tired. He was able to perform the flash step as many times as he wanted without feeling tired. This did not apply to when he was in a match, though. Using the blood swipe did take up Quinn's stamina. He felt this affecting him after sending out attack after attack during a match. It meant the white room acted like some type of training room, where they were unaffected by their physical body's restraints. With the flash step learnt, Quinn finally wanted to experience a fight with a tougher opponent. Instead of searching by power level, Quinn decided to select Quick Match and would let fate decide the level of his opponent. In the real world, you wouldn't be able to choose who you went up against, so it was important for Quinn to have experience fighting in all sorts of situations. Then, a few moments later, a match was found. This time, when Quinn entered the arena floor, he could see his opponent standing opposite him. He was wearing a long red cape, and by his side were 2 daggers. Quinn also realized they weren't alone either. There was also a person sitting in the stands watching Quinn and his opponent. "Oh, don't worry about him," the cape man said. "He's just my senior. He's watching me fight so he can give tips." Quinn then tried using his inspect skill on his opponent to see what power level or ability they had, but there was no luck. The inspect skill didn't seem to work in the game. But before the match began, Quinn made sure to open up his status screen and decided to leave it open and off to the side. During this match, he wanted to keep a close eye on it. When both of them were ready, the countdown started over their heads. 3, 2, 1, go! As soon as the sound dinged, indicating the start of the match, the cape man took out his daggers and swung them out fast. 2 wind blades followed. The attack was similar to Quinn's blood swipe, only the distance the attack could be used was far greater and faster. Quinn then decided to attack with his own blood swipe. The 2 lines of power clashed in the middle and cancelled each other out. "A red color! What ability is that?" The cape man was wondering, and at the same time, the cape man senior was thinking the same thing. This time, Quinn charged forward. His abilities all required him to be used at close range. The caped man, seeing this, threw more wind strikes out, but Quinn just replied back with his own blood swipes, but this time sending out 4 of them. When the first 2 cancelled out the wind strikes, the next 2 carried on moving forward. That's when the caped man lifted his cape and spun around. The blood strikes smacked into the cape, but there was no effect and not even a scratch left on the cape. "Is that beast armor, and a high-level one at that?" Quinn thought. The 2 of them were now in punching distance of one another. The caped man swung his daggers out fast. Quinn lifted his hands and managed to grab onto the daggers, allowing the blade to just come out from his fingertips. Then suddenly, the aura around the daggers grew, and the wind forming around dagger allowed the ends of the blade to grow and act more like a sword, piercing Quinn in both shoulders. The capped man pulled back and went for another strike. "I don't know what your ability is, but it's over," the capped man said. But then suddenly, his dagger had hit nothing but empty air and space, and no one could be seen. As he turned around, a sharp claw penetrated the man's stomach. Then another attack after attack at great speed was tearing his stomach apart, and to finish him off, 2 more blood swipes. 25 experience gained, 30 of 800 experience. The man watching in the arena stood up on his feet as he saw his friend lose the match. The 2 of them so far had been on a winning streak, taking it in turns facing opponent after opponent. The sudden loss had come as a shock to them. That skill at the end, what was that? Then, just as Quinn was about to log out and go find another match, he heard someone call out to him. "Wait!" the man in the seat shouted. "Please fight me!" Quinn had no problem with this and accepted, but unknown to him, the man he was about to face was one of the strongest students from another military school. The student who had been sitting up in the stands and watching the fight between Quinn and his friend was known as Nate Snell. He was a second year from another academy, and in his academy he was well known for being one of the strongest second years. Nate often played in the game to improve his fighting skills, as this was important for him due to the fact it went hand in hand with his ability. He was obsessed with learning all different types of martial arts skills. There was one area in the game that it didn't allow you to improve on, though. Even though the game allowed you to use abilities, it did not have the system in place to use soul weapons. This would be an almost impossible task, considering every person's soul weapon was different, even if they had the same ability. With a keen eye for martial arts, the second Nate had seen Quinn perform his flash step, he needed to know who this person was. The footwork in the skill was so beautiful, so quick, that even he wasn't able to keep track of where Quinn had gone. After asking Quinn for a battle, he was overjoyed that he accepted. For the two of them to start their match, they needed to add each other to their friends list first. Hard Steely has sent you a friend request. Quinn accepted the friend request and was happy to fight, honestly. Quinn wasn't too bothered who he went up against, but after fighting against Nate's friend, he felt like he should have had a good match coming up that would help him improve. Blood Evolver has accepted your friend request. Blood Evolver? Does his ability have something to do with blood? That would explain those red lines coming out from his hands, but was there such an ability in the system? Nate thought. There were thousands of different abilities in the system, so Nate wasn't sure of all of them, but he had fought many battles in the game, and this was the first time seeing someone with this type of ability. Before the match was about to begin, Nate had asked if he could speak to his friend Sam for a few moments. Quinn agreed as he wanted to check a few things out himself. During the match, when Quinn used his flash step, he was hoping his own system would show him something, but nothing happened. Of course, this was because he was in the game, but he knew that the flash step felt like it had taken a significant amount of stamina from him. His current stamina points were at a 12. If he was to make a rough guess, he would say that 4 strikes of Blood Swipe took down 1 stamina point, meaning he would be able to perform around 48 Blood Swipes before running out of stamina. However, if he did this, he would reach 0 HP before even using up all his stamina. But as the blonde man had said in the video, Flash Step took a considerable amount of stamina. At most, Quinn knew he would currently only be able to produce it twice in one game, meaning it took at least 5 points of stamina. Quinn would have to think carefully when using this information in a match. At first he thought it wasn't so important increasing his stamina, as long as he was strong enough or fast enough, he could win his fights. But in a prolonged battle and matches against multiple enemies, as soon as his stamina dropped to 0, he would be as good as dead. Not only that, but Quinn dreaded the thought of having to fight in the sunlight with these stats. Over at the other end of the arena, Nate was busy talking to Sam about his match. "You are such a fool," Nate said. "I know, I'm sorry," Sam replied. Nate looked at the flapping cape that Sam was wearing and started to shake his head. "We just got this incredible thing and you didn't even use it properly in the fight. When he went out from your view, if you had turned around your back, it would have been protected, or you could have turtled up with the cape. It's hard to get used to having something on your back. If someone vanishes in front of you and you know they're behind you, you naturally turn around, wouldn't you?" Sam replied. Sam then started to look at the ground as he was saddened, remembering how he had lost the match. "My win streak," Sam cried. Nate proceeded to pat Sam on the shoulder with pity before walking to his fighting spot. "You know the deal. If I win against him, then that means I win our bet, and you'll owe me those credits." As Sam headed back to the arena stands, he was praying for Quinn to kick his friend's ass. He had lost too many bets recently and was running low on credits. 3, 2, 1, and the match had begun. Surprisingly, both of them at the same time had decided to charge in. Although Quinn didn't know his opponent's abilities, his attacks were more effective closer in range. If he was going up against an elemental user, then it was always better for him to get closer anyway. And as soon as Quinn was within 5 meters, he threw out 2 blood swipes. Suddenly, Nat's speed dropped dramatically, his skin started to turn into a shiny material, and his footsteps were heavy. As the blood swipes reached and hit his body, the sound of metal clanging against each other was heard. For the first time when Quinn's attack had hit an opponent's body, it had done 0 damage whatsoever. The metal shine from Nate's body seemed to shift and now was concentrated in his arm. It allowed Nate to move a lot faster and close the distance. He pushed his hand forward, and out came a long metal silver pole. It was too fast for Quinn to react, and the pole dug into his stomach and continued to push him back. The attack was strong, and Quinn had lost about 10% of his health. The pole continued to grow and push him back, and his health continued to fall. Quinn then grabbed onto the pole with both hands, and using all his strength, managed to stop its momentum. "Wow, looks like you're strong as well," Nate said, surprised. Not only did his opponent have a ranged attack, but seemed to have super strength now as well. Quinn pushed the pole to the side and swung out his claws, this time firing 4 blood swipes. The pole then started to retract quicker than the blood swipes and absorbed back into Nate's body. He then put both of his hands together, and the metal liquid started to form an oval shape and eventually formed a shield. Each strike hit the shield and there was no effect. However, Quinn had expected this result when Nate retracted the metal back into his body. Quinn was in front of him ready to strike, but Nate remained calm and shifted the metal over his body to the exact spot where Quinn was aiming for his head. The punch landed, but Nate's head didn't even move a single inch, and again the game had recorded no such damage. Nate then grabbed Quinn's fist and with his other hand formed the pull, whacking him to the ground. "Come on, you should be better than this," Nate said. The truth was, Nate was purposely shifting the metal into a pole rather than a sword. This way, the match would last longer. It had been a while since Quinn felt like this, weak. There was only one thing left for him to try. Quinn lifted himself off the ground and started to breathe in, calming himself down. Anger would only distract him. Then he was ready, and Nate could see it too. "Come on," Nate said as he shifted the metal pole back into his body and into one of his fists. Quinn once again charged forward and threw out a blood swipe. Nate blocked the attack, easily lifting his arm and knocking it away, but it was only meant to serve as a distraction in the first place. When Quinn got close enough, Nate threw out his fist, and at the same time, he responded with flash step, avoiding the strike and appearing behind Nate. Too predictable. Nate had prepared for this after watching the last match and made sure his back was already fully covered in the metal-like alloy. Quinn then lifted his foot off the ground, let the energy go through from his toes up to his fist. As he stomped down with one foot, he pulled back one hand and let out another fist. Bang! The sound of two solid objects hitting each other sounded loudly in the distance. For a brief second, the two of them were frozen in place, and for the first time, Quinn was able to do damage, and it was a lot. Nate's eyes grew in shock as he saw the attack bring his health down by nearly half. Nate knew he was in danger, and he could no longer take the fight as easy as he did before. He swung his body and at the same time had shifted a piece of metal into a sword. But once again, Quinn had used the flash step to avoid the strike. Damn it, again, how is he so fast? As Nate turned to look at where his opponent was, he was surprised to see Quinn collapsed on the ground. Quinn was breathing heavily. He could no longer move. The use of flash step twice, including the fact that he had used hammer strike, he had pushed his body way beyond its limits. "Let's do this again sometime," Nate said as he stabbed Quinn on the ground, ending the game. Although the match had ended in Nate's victory, he was more excited than ever. "Looks like the military tournament is going to be a fun one this year."
What will Quinn do to address his stamina limitations and improve his chances in future matches? How will his loss to Nate impact his confidence and strategy moving forward? And what does the future hold for these two rivals as they prepare to face off again in the military tournament?
After finishing his intense battle with Nate, his hour using the VR capsule was up, and Quinn was no longer able to participate in any more matches. Although he had lost his match, he felt satisfied. He had learnt a lot during his battle with Nate. His attacks, including his blood swipe, were not strong enough to do any damage to Nate while he was using his metal ability. However, his hammer strike skill was. Hammer strike didn't increase his strength, but now Quinn had a good idea what it did do. It was an attack that focused on the inside, an internal attack, the perfect counter to those whose abilities who hardened or transformed their bodies. Quinn couldn't wait to find out what the other tutorials the blonde man had in store for him, but he had no idea how to unlock them. The blonde man had simply said when he was ready, they would unlock for him. There were two things this meant. One might be when Quinn's stats were high enough to complete the fighting skills requirements, or when Quinn was a high enough level. The second lesson the fight had taught him was how important stamina was. The flash step was an incredible skill that allowed him to avoid a strike in an instant, but if he used it more than twice, then he would be done for, and if he was out in the sun, he wasn't even sure he would be able to use the skill at all. This made Quinn think long and hard about what to put his stat points into in the future. Perhaps going for an agility or strength-based character wasn't the best thing after all. With that in mind, Quinn had set up an important meeting with Layla today. There was one thing he needed to learn about more than anything, especially if he wanted to get stronger in the future. It was a Sunday, so Quinn still had the rest of the day off, before having to go back to the standard military lessons for a week. The sun was out bright and early, and Quinn was standing outside the school gates, patiently waiting for Layla. "This damn sun," Quinn said while his body was covered in sweat. All current stats have been halved. Ever since he had evolved from a human into a halfling, the sun seemed to bother him even more. He was covered in sweat, even though it wasn't that hot, and he was starting to have ringing headaches if he stayed outside too long. Finally, after waiting a while, Layla arrived. "You ready?" The two of them walked out of the school's premise and carried on walking until they eventually reached a nice quiet park. There were some students outside messing around, playing with their abilities, and at the same time there was some military personnel relaxing on the benches. "Peaceful, isn't it?" Layla said. "Yeah, it's kind of nice." Then a thought came into his head of all the news he had heard on TV about what life was like during the war, how it could start up again any second, and finally, the death of his parents. "But who knows how long it will last. That's why I need to keep getting stronger." Layla placed the heavy bag on the ground, and it seemed like it was a weight off her shoulders. Even if she was using her ability, it would be tiring for someone to keep it up on the whole walk here. That's when Layla started to empty out all the contents in her bag. There were all sorts of things inside. There were several items of thick clothing such as hats, scarves, sunglasses, and most of it seemed to be black in color. Then she continued to pull out even more stuff, lotions and lotions of sun cream, and finally she pulled out an umbrella. "Did it cost a lot?" Quinn asked, worried after seeing how much she had bought. "Don't worry about it. My family sent me the credits, and I used up what the Academy gave me," Layla replied. "Besides, I got it all from the marketplace, so it was dirt cheap." The marketplace was an online store that was used all around the world. It sold your everyday items such as food, clothes, utilities, and other things. With the use of teleporters, your items were able to be shipped to you in almost an instant, as long as you could afford one of these. If not, you would have to go to a collection point. And the military school had one of these collection points for students to use. But other than just your everyday items, the marketplace was also used by people to sell and buy beast weapons, skill books, ability books, and all sorts of things that would be beneficial to you in battles. However, to access this part of the marketplace, you would need either military personal ID, which all students got a temporary one to use during their time there, or if you were a traveler. Travelers were people who didn't work for the military, but worked for a private company and often went into portals to explore different worlds. "So, what do you want to try first?" Layla said. The whole purpose of today was to find out if there was any way to either reduce the effect that the sun had on the system, or even temporarily stop it altogether, and there was no one better than Layla for the job. She knew everything about vampires, having grown up reading about them. She ordered whatever she thought might have been effective. Quinn looked at all the items that she had brought over. He then noticed a few more things on the ground with her. There was a metal-shaped cross, a clove of garlic, and even a piece of silver jewelry. "Oh, those are for later," Layla said, embarrassed, noticing Quinn staring at her stuff. "We should also try to find out if you have any other weaknesses of normal vampires as well." "All right, why don't we just try the umbrella first?" Quinn said as he knelt down to pick it up. He then stood still and popped open the umbrella. It was solid black in color to make sure that most of the light didn't penetrate or get through it. Quinn then adjusted the umbrella a few times to make sure his body was completely covered in the shadow. Then, to his surprise, stats have returned to normal. While Quinn was fully covered under the shade, his stats had returned. Then he lifted his hand and placed it outside the shade zone ever so slightly, and as soon as the tiniest part of his finger was outside the same usual status screen had appeared. "You are being affected by direct sunlight. All stats will be halved." "Well?" Layla asked. "It works, but even if a little bit of my body is in the sun, then I start to feel weak." This wouldn't do. Holding the umbrella, although would return his stats, it would be difficult to use in a fight. One hand would be occupied holding the umbrella, while the other would be free. Also, it was a big, weak target that the enemy could easily destroy. But at last he found out that if he just carried an umbrella with him, he would no longer feel weak. It was a good idea to keep one on him for now. "That's a special umbrella," Layla said. "It's one used to block out the UV from the sun. Although at most it can block out about 90%, it's not perfect. To be honest, I'm surprised it worked." "Is the UV rays why I feel weak then?" "Not necessarily. I mean, vampire lore is all over the place, but these myths had to be grounded somewhere, right?" Layla then looked at the ground and picked up the sun cream. If the umbrella really worked because of the UV, then some sun cream should have some effect. Layla then walked up to Quinn, squirting some of the cream onto her hand. "You ready?" Quinn then went a little red, thinking about Layla applying the cream onto his body. He realized that she was kind of cute. So she was a little strange and knew too much about vampires. Everyone had their geeky thing they knew about and was obsessed with. Then Quinn felt something cold on his leg. She had taken Quinn's silence as a yes and started to slather the cream all over his body. After making sure everywhere she could see covered in cream, to finish it off, she placed sunglasses over Quinn's eyes. "Although we can stop the UV on your eyelids, we can't on your eyeballs," Layla said. "Well, anything?" This time there was no such result. When opening up his status, the UV cream hadn't even made a little bit of impact. Quinn still felt incredibly weak, and his stats were still halved. "So it looks like it's not to do with the UV then. Although the umbrella worked, it can only block so much of the UV, and same with the cream. So I was hoping it would have some effect, but this means it's most likely some other property in the sun that we don't know about." To be honest, Quinn was thankful that the sun cream didn't work. The idea of waking up every day and doing it as a daily routine, at some point the cream would wear off too. He also couldn't imagine in the middle of the fight asking his opponent to wait to lather and cream himself all over. He had pictures in his head of asking Varden to cover for him while he brought out a bottle of sun cream. Finally, it was time for the last test. This one Quinn was dreading the most, the clothes test. He was already sweating and feeling hot as it was, and couldn't imagine putting on a load of black clothing. But he thought it was best to get it over and done with as soon as possible. First, Quinn placed a sweater over the top of his body, then a pair of black thick trousers on his feet. Instead of trainers, he changed to black boots. Then on his hand, a pair of leather black gloves. Finally, on his head, he had a large back top hat. Looking at him, Layla could barely hold in her laughter. He looked absolutely ridiculous. "Breathe, breathe, Layla," she mumbled. "Well, anything?" "No, not yet anyway." "Well, we might as well try the rest." Layla then continued to place clothes onto Quinn. This time she had covered his face with a balaclava, and even where his eyes were, she had put a sleeping mask on. More hats were placed on, and now every inch of his skin was covered. "Anything?" "No!" Quinn shouted, but it sounded muffled through the clothes. However, Layla didn't give up yet. She felt like if the umbrella had worked, then this had to work as well. She continued to place all the remaining clothes she had brought with, and then finally, while Layla was piling on the clothes, Quinn managed to shout something. "Wait, it's working!" Quinn said. Although the clothes had worked, Quinn was around 3 inches thick in black clothing. Layla quickly helped Quinn take off all the clothing, as it seemed like he was a bit wobbly on his legs and was going to pass out any second now. Once the two of them were finished, Quinn opened up the umbrella and the energy started to restore back into his body again. The two of them sat down on the clean-cut grass and were discussing the results of the test. "Well, you can't go out like that," Layla said. "You couldn't move in that thing." "Agreed, but at least we know that the most important thing is to stop the sun hitting me." Quinn started to feel the umbrella, wondering if perhaps he could get clothes made out of the same material. Then the problem would be the material would be too weak. Most likely the reason the clothes didn't work so well was because they didn't block out the sun enough. He needed more solid but flexible material. There was some stuff out there that might have worked, like a black latex suit or something, but these weren't strong enough for fighting. It could easily be torn or ripped, and then he would be back to being normal weak Quinn again. Suddenly, a thought had entered Quinn's mind. He started to remember the fight he had inside the VR game. When he had gone against Sam, he had used a cape that was able to block his blood swipe. The material was not only flexible, but strong as well. The cape was most likely made from some type of beast from one of the portals. If Quinn couldn't get enough of this material, maybe he could make a suit of some kind that could not only protect him from the sun, but also be strong enough to be used in combat. A smile started to appear on his face. He now couldn't wait to be transported to hunt some beasts. After finishing the test with the items, Layla was eager to try out a few of the other things she had brought along with her. "Do I really have to worry about something like this?" "Not really. To be honest, I just wanted to try out everything. Garlic always acted more as a repellent in the first place, and the fact that you're holding it like that would suggest it wouldn't hurt." While Quinn looked at the piece of garlic, he decided to use the inspect skill just to be sure. If something would harm him, he was sure the system would be able to tell him basic information such as this. Inspect. A clove of garlic. Due to your heightened senses, the piece may test extremely bad. Safe to consume. The good news was the system had informed him that the garlic wasn't poisonous, which meant it would be able to do with the other items as well. The bad news was that he still had to eat the garlic, so Layla didn't get suspicious. He broke the clove into a small piece before placing it into his mouth. The taste was incredibly strong. It felt like he was eating. Not that he knew how that tasted anyway, but if he had to imagine, this was it. Quinn immediately started to spit on the ground, trying to get the taste out of his mouth. "Well, at least you look fine," Layla said. Quinn had actually expected this result before even using his inspect skill. The taste of food had slightly changed ever since his evolution. Sweet food such as ice cream and cakes now tasted bland. It was the same with fruit. The only thing that still tasted fine for him was meat. Although everything seemed to taste slightly saltier than before, it was the same with other herbs as well. Although there was one thing that drastically changed for him, and that was blood. It had a greater taste than anything he had before, and was as sweet as caramel itself. Just thinking about it, Quinn wanted another taste, but he was still able to control himself just fine. It was the same way when someone thought about chocolate. They suddenly wanted chocolate, but they didn't need it. Before touching any of the other items, Quinn made sure to use his inspect skill on each one. First was the metal cross. "A religious symbol that has no effect," the system said. Then the chain. "A silver chain that is made up of 92% silver. Wearing the item can be used as a fashion accessory." With both the items, there was no such warning. Quinn then proceeded to pick up both of them with no worry. He was starting to trust the system more and more lately, as it had been more helpful and accurate. "So what's the story behind these two things?" Quinn asked. "I kind of get the cross, but what about the silver? And they're just for werewolves?" Suddenly, Layla's eyes started to sparkle up. "I'm glad you asked. Vampire lore has gone further back than you think. Even in Greek mythology, they have tales of vampires. The first vampire was said to be cursed by the god Apollo, to be burnt by sunlight. Then, when the man tried to touch Artemis' bow, she cursed the human further to be affected by silver," Layla explained. "Of course, there are other reasons, but this is one of the older ones. Then with the cross, vampires have always been seen as workers of the devil, a creature that needed to suck blood to live, and of course God, in the eyes of many, is a fighter of evil, and the cross is a symbol of the god." Layla then grabbed both items from Quinn and placed them back in her bag. "But now, looking at you, I can clearly see all of that was a load of rubbish," Layla said, sounding a bit disappointed by the whole experience. "The only vampire weakness it seems you have so far is sunlight, although I have to admit that's a pretty big one. Do you feel like you're not getting older yet?" "What?" Quinn said, confused. "How would I even know? It's only been a few days. I mean, I don't feel any older, but I could say that about the rest of my life. You kind of just got older without realizing it." Then a dreaded thought had entered Quinn's mind. If it was true that he would no longer age, did that mean his appearance would stay the same as it did now? Would he look like a young teenage boy for the rest of his life? With the test over, it was time for the two of them to head back to their dorm rooms. Quinn decided to head back to the dorm rooms and see if Varden and Peter wanted to hang out and do something for the rest of the evening. But when he entered the room, once again neither Varden or Peter was there. Quinn didn't worry too much about it. It seemed like he had been getting into trouble lately with the second years, but currently they were staying well clear of him after the incident. It was Peter Quinn was more worried about. He couldn't help but shake the feeling that these new friends of Peter weren't actually friends of his, and was wondering what to do. With that, Quinn decided to sleep for the night and wait till the next day. When he woke up, he was happy to see that the other two had managed to return to their rooms in the middle of the night. For once, the three of them had decided to head down to the canteen together, and after a long time, the three of them casually ate food and chatted about what they had done yesterday. Once the three of them had finished eating, it was time for them to head to their homeroom classes together. On Monday morning, they were to attend a morning class with their teacher, Dell. This lesson would be a theory-based lesson, either the history of the human race, or even notice about what would happen. The three of them sat in the back of the class as usual, while Layla sat at the front, with Erin by her side. The students waited patiently until Dell had finally arrived. "All right, class, I have an important announcement to make. The preparations for your first portal outing have been completed. It's time for you kids to go explore the universe a bit more." Before Dell was to inform the students about the portal training they would be participating in, he needed to explain to the students how the portals worked. After all, it would be a first for nearly every student there, apart from a few of them. Portals allowed humans to travel to and back from locations that they had been to before. They were often used to travel to other planets. The technology was obtained when humanity managed to take down their first Dalki ship and discovered a portal inside. Usually when such advanced technology was discovered, people wouldn't be able to dissect and replicate it so easily. Just because you had the technology didn't mean you understood how it worked. But thanks to the legendary scientist named Richard Eno, he had easily been able to dissect all of the equipment found on board of the ship. Another great contributor to the war against the Dalki, some people assumed that he had an ability of some sort that helped him along the way, but these were just rumors and no one knew for sure. However, one thing for certain was he was a great man. Once he had found this technology, he distributed it not only to the military, but also to private companies as well. He made sure that such power wouldn't just end up in one group's hands. Back then, the world and humans were fighting together, but who knew what would happen once the war had ended? In today's world, there were generally 3 different groups of people who had and owned portals. The military was the first group. Next were private corporations. They usually had powerful originals backing them. Many of these companies would also form a faction, a group of powerful travelers, just for exploring other planets. And lastly was the group known as Pure, a group that didn't believe in the use of abilities. There were 3 types of portals, each different in color. There was green, orange, and red. Each of these portals meant a different thing. Green meant that the planet it led to had already been explored, and there were human shelters that had been built. These allowed people to live there if they wished, or just stay there temporarily. The next was orange. This meant that the planet hadn't been fully explored yet. There were some shelters in place, but the level of the beast could be too high in certain areas, or they just hadn't explored everywhere yet. And finally, the red portals. These were unexplored planets. There were no shelters for regular humans to live in. Only travelers or military personnel would usually go into these portals for exploration, and the worst thing about them was they didn't know if the Dalki were on the planet as well. After all, the Dalki had the same technology, so it wouldn't be too strange to run into them, and although under a treaty, if a few people were to go missing on an unknown planet, it was hard to prove something had happened, and the humans weren't ready for another war just yet. "And that is all the information you need to know about portals," Dell said. "What about the beasts that were discovered on those planets? Will we learn about them?" the student asked. "For now, that's all you need to know about the portals. Yes, this also led us to discover beasts on these planets, and they are what we use to create our beast weapons. But you will be told more detail about that when you arrive," Dell explained. "Although I will tell you now that you can also thank Richard Eno for that discovery as well. Now for the important part. The portal expedition will take place next week, but before even that, you will be required to form your own team of 5. Although on this trip you will travel as a class, you must have a squad and stick together. Even the green portals are a dangerous place filled with beasts, and the trackers on your watch will not work outside the academy. We will have no way to come and save you. Do you know where we will be going? That information will be revealed to you on the day. Many of you here have family members who, if they knew where you were, would send guards out to protect you on these planets, but that wouldn't be fair, especially since we will also be assessing you on this. Now, if there aren't any more questions, your combat classes for today are cancelled. Today you are to form a team of 5 and report back to us by the end of the day." Dell then left the room to attend to other business, while allowing the students to form their own group of 5s. Varden then turned his head immediately. "Hey, Quinn, you want to be on the—" But standing by Quinn's side already was Layla, who had sprinted from the front of the class to the back. "Hey, do you want to make a team with me, Quinn?" Layla said, smiling. Sure," Quinn answered. Truthfully, Quinn wanted to ask Layla to be on the same team. They didn't know how long their first assessment was going to take, and if he was to get hurt or injured, he was going to need a blood source of some type. Even if Varden didn't like it, he knew this was going to happen. "Hey, Quinn, do you mind if I join as well?" he said, smiling, trying to hide his annoyance. "Of course, and Peter as well." Peter's face was a little shocked at hearing the sound of his name, and at the same time his feelings were confused. "Yeah, that would be good," Peter said. Then, when the others were just thinking about who the 5th member should be, Erin had approached Varden, of all people in the room. "I want to make a team with you." Not only were Quinn and the others shocked that Erin had approached Varden, but so was the whole class. In Dell's class, Erin was the strongest student there. Nearly everyone wanted her on their team, but over the last few days, when people had tried to approach her, she had always given a cold response. It seemed like she was disinterested in everything apart from getting stronger. "I'm sorry," Varden said, "but I've already decided to make a team with these guys." Varden's response to Erin seemed to be even crazier to everyone else as well. They had seen Varden fight that day when they were surrounded by the second years. After witnessing that, no one would say he was any weaker than Erin. If the two of them were to combine powers and found a few other strong people, it meant that they could easily come up with the strongest team in the class. Erin then looked at the group of people who Varden pointed at. To be honest, she didn't seem to recognize any of them. "Who are they?" Erin said. "What? We took the test together. I even helped you out at the assembly hall," Layla complained. The truth was, Erin never took the time to remember people's faces. She only cared about those who were strong. When she saw how weak they were in the test assessment, she didn't even bother with them any longer. Although there was one person who had caught her eye other than Varden, and that was Quinn. She remembered him throwing the black beast balls at a lightning-fast speed and taking out a student. Then, when she looked at his wrist, she saw he was only a level 1 user. "Why would you stay with these weak people? Surely you can get a better grade if you join me and a few others," Erin said. The first assessment and future assessments in the portal outing would determine their final grade. For those who had a cozy family to get back to, it didn't matter too much, but to the rest, it determined their future. The grade they got when they left the military academy would decide whether they could join a strong private company, or whether they would just end up joining the bottom of the barrel, being treated even worse than now. "I don't care about the grades, I just want to have fun while I'm still in school," Varden replied. But Erin was determined not to give up. "Fine, I can accept the girl and the strangely strong boy, but I can't accept him," Erin said, pointing at Peter. Peter's heart suddenly started to thump louder. A fear started to take over him as he heard Erin speak these words. If he didn't get in Varden's and Quinn's team, he would be in huge trouble. "Why do we need you anyway?" Varden said. "Wait a minute," Layla interrupted. "I think she would make a good addition to the team. Besides, Varden, doesn't your ability rely on those around you to be strong as well? As far as I remember, the beast doesn't have abilities, so you would have to rely on us, and we don't exactly have strong abilities." "Layla, I understand what you're saying, but for once I agree with Varden," Quinn replied. "I don't care how strong she is. She can't just come in and kick one of us out. She can join the team, but only if Peter stays." It was good to have strong allies, but at what cost? If Quinn was to kick out Peter to replace him with a stranger, he would just be as bad as everyone else who had treated him like crap just for being weak. He didn't want to change into one of those types of people. Erin then started to look around the room before looking at Varden once again. She thought back to how Varden was able to deal with Momo quite well before the use of the soul weapon. After looking around the room, there didn't seem to be a single person in Dell's class that matched up to him. "Fine, I will join, but I wish for the 5 of us to have a retesting to see where we stand," Erin asked. "Perhaps we can go visit the training center, display what we can do to the rest." Layla and Quinn looked at each other with a half-worried look in their eye. The 5 of them then headed down to the training center. It was the same place that Layla had first spotted Quinn, who had sneaked in the place at night. Right now, the room was filled with multiple different people from all sorts of different classes. All the other classes had also been informed about the upcoming test and had decided to find out what each other's abilities were. This would give them the best chance of defeating and capturing as many beasts as possible and increasing their chances of survival. "Well, what do you want us to do?" Varden asked. "I've already seen your powers, but I can't remember too much about the girl and the other 2. Perhaps the girl can go first on the strength machine." Layla went up as asked and went to the large circular strength machine. She concentrated her mind and threw out her fist at the same time. She used the force of her telekinesis to push her hand as strong as she could. The numbers slowly went up on the machine's display until it had eventually reached number 8. "Damn it, same as last time. Looks like I haven't improved much," Layla complained. "For a level 2, that's a quite weak strength score, but judging by the bow, you're a ranged user anyway. It will be quite handy to have someone like you on the team," Erin said. She then walked up to the 2 boys, Quinn and Peter. "Well, I'm hoping that both of you can at least get the same score as her." Quinn was starting to get annoyed by all her taunts, but he took a deep breath and held it in. With her on the team, it would cause fewer troubles with the others. Even if they did defeat beasts and obtain their crystals, there was a high chance that another team might target them and try to steal them. But just having Erin on the team would stop that. Peter walked up to the machine holding the mud staff in his hand. "Looks like he's still level 1 then," Erin said. Level 1 Earth users didn't have the ability to extract Earth from the ground. All they could do was reform the Earth in their hand. They could only control the Earth they were touching rather than the Earth around them. As Peter went to punch the machine, the Earth around from the pole started to form around his fist. As he hit the machine, the numbers started to go up, and finally it stopped at 8, the same score as Layla. "Well, what are you waiting for?" Erin said, looking at Quinn. As Quinn walked up to the strength machine, all he wanted to do was punch the machine as hard as he could. He wanted to shut up the arrogant Erin, who felt like she was better than everyone else. Why did she choose to act like this? Simply because she had a better ability than others? Because her family was well off enough to buy her a strong ability book? But Quinn couldn't reveal himself here, especially in front of the others. They all had seen him on the test day, and they all knew Quinn still didn't have an ability apart from Layla. He looked at the machine and started to wonder if he performed a hammer strike using all his strength, would the number rise up? Surely the number would be above his 16 strength. He readied his fist and redid his footwork. The gauntlets were equipped on his hands, and Quinn let his fist out. He tried controlling the power output, hoping to achieve a similar score to the other two. Bang! His fist collided with the large drum-like machine, and the numbers slowly started to rise. 8, 9, and then finally the number had stopped at 10. Quinn estimated if his current strength with the gloves was 16 when he needed to use half his strength when hitting the machine to get an 8. But such macro-level control was nearly impossible to get right, and he had managed to go slightly over. "Hey man, didn't you get stronger?" Varden said, surprised. "I thought you got a 5 on the test last time. You been working out or something?" Quinn started to laugh, trying to come up with something. "Actually, it was thanks to that game you showed me," Quinn replied. "I met someone who really helped and showed me how to activate the beast weapon strength properly. I worked hard hoping I wouldn't be useless for you guys. When I threw that beast ball that time back in the assembly hall, I realized how useful it would be if I learned how to activate the best weapon." This was a lie, but Quinn felt like it was quite convincing. "Didn't the second year say you needed to treat it like activating your ability, though? I thought you didn't have one." "Apparently that isn't a requirement, but just to help you visualize activating your beast weapons," Quinn replied back. Sweat was starting to run down his face. All he could do now was hope the others would buy it. "Well, a score of 10 isn't that impressive. The only reason we are talking about it is because you're a level 1, Erin said. For once, Quinn was happy Erin's smugness had drawn the attention away from him. "Is this okay then?" Layla asked. "Yes," Erin replied. "I still wish to join your team. I believe even with the extra luggage we have on board, with me and Varden, we can come out as the top team during this assessment." After testing everyone's strength, the group decided to discuss a few things, such as formation and what to do. Although the discussions didn't last for long, if they were to travel as a group, Layla would stay at the back for support, and Erin and Varden would be at the front. Usually the physical damage dealers would be at the front of the squad, while elemental users in the middle. But in this scenario, Quinn and Peter were considered so weak that they were placed in the center for protection. Erin felt like it was quite useless to practice anything else after finding out how weak the other two abilities were, so the group's meeting had ended early, and she decided to go off on her own to train somewhere. "Well, if combat classes have been cancelled for the day, is there anything you wanted to do?" Varden asked. "Actually, I was planning to head to the VR capsules," Quinn replied. "I've been trying out a bunch of abilities so I can decide what ability to pick in the future." Suddenly, Varden started to shiver. "You can go ahead," Varden said. "I know I showed you how to play the other day, but to be honest, I'm sick and tired of that game. I played it so much growing up and all." With Quinn heading off to the VR room, that left Peter and Varden all on their own. "Hey, so do you want to practice a bit more with your ability? I know you're saving up so you can buy a few more skill books. Maybe we can get you to a level 2 before heading off into the portal." Peter looked around the room at the other students before giving an answer. "Sure, that sounds like a good idea," Peter replied. But Peter's strange actions didn't go unnoticed, and Varden had a feeling it had something to do with those students he went to hang around with a few days ago. Quinn had finally arrived at the VR center. He paid his 10 credits for an hour and got into his pod as usual. At the moment, it was the easiest way for Quinn to level up and get stronger. He decided while inside the capsule, he would split his session into 2 halves. For the first 30 minutes, he would spend it facing against level 1s. On average, it took him around 5 minutes to defeat an opponent in the level 1 stage. Gaining 25 experience points for each opponent he defeated would allow him to gain around 150 experience points. Then, for the second half of the session, he would use it searching for quick matches, battling against opponents of all different strengths. This would improve his fighting IQ out in the world. Quinn entered the game and started his first match with his plan. He did the usual avoiding the enemy's strikes and dealing with his opponent with either the strength of his two fists or by using a barrage of blood swipes. That's when Nate noticed that the ID Blood Evolver was online. Nate was still interested in this person and decided to check him out. As long as they were in your friends list, you were able to spectate their matches. Nate then was suddenly transported into the arena and began to watch Quinn's matches one by one. And all that he witnessed was Quinn defeating weak level 1s in a matter of minutes. But it was strange, for someone as strong as him, just what on earth was he doing? When Nate thought of him, he never imagined Quinn to be the type of person to bully the weak. "Let the grinding begin," Quinn said as he took down his next opponent.
Subscribe to the Pocket FM Blockbuster YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notifications. Check out our channel for more exciting shows.